Okay. So they forced me to run through that gate. I have no idea why. And I was very, very sleepy. Anyone here that is as sleepy as I am, raise your hand, please. Oh, no. You're not supposed to raise your hand. I'm supposed to be the only one here if you're sleepy because you are attending my talk. Come on, shake it up, shake it up. Stand up, please. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Come. Stand up. Yeah, let's do a kind of jog here. And I'm going to do, oh, shit. Oh, sorry. I forgot that I have my phone up there. I was about to take a selfie. Can you take a photo for us, please? Say cheese. Right? Cheese again. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Please sit down. And I hope that you are not sleepy by now. Shake it out. So this is my talk. To be honest, I don't know what got into me when I decided the talk title got very long. The art of visualization and composition in building component system. I have zero memory how to recall it. Anyway, so this talk is about how we build in components in Microsoft, like Windows. You know, we're from Microsoft. No, not really. But this talk, I'm going to talk to you about how we build components. And it actually based on my experience and my project in Microsoft, what we're doing right now. But first, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, not a long, long time ago, in a few galaxies not far, far away. No one laughing? Really? You didn't watch Star Wars? No? This is Star Wars. Come on. I'm ashamed of you. Anyway, so there was a guy who named Jason. And he's so excited that this is the first time he going to go to Vue Amsterdam and attend talks. And he just finished building a pizza gallery, and he shipped it and received very good feedback from his team. So good that everyone loves his work and want to reuse it in their project outside of his application. Of course, when people say they want to reuse your work, they always have some tiny things that they want you to fix or to change. Just because, you're almost perfect, but I prefer it to be this way or add more functionality. That's life. So this is his, well, it's me, but anyway, we just pretend that Jason make it. So this is his pizza gallery. And the problem is now there's people want to add more features to it. And people want to add also customizations. And behind the scene, this is how the component logic look like. You can see it's very simple. You have a one-on mount callback where you fetch the pizza and also do some image optimization with Cloudinary. Hey, yep, I used to work for Cloudinary, so that's why I'm talking about Cloudinary here. And then one day, the product manager come and say, hey, I want to extend also, how about loading screen? You don't get to load while you are fetching data, right? Arrow screen. How about a list view? Well, we have grid, but people don't like grid. People want to choose to build in grid, in list. How about adding some actions like add to core? And where's my search? Everyone wants to have search. No one wants to scroll up and down to find something. Even building a ship with ChatGPT to help you search better. So, search is essential here. And then, this is only internal. And then, in the external side, other teams say, oh, your component is so great. We want to use the component in our project, but with a little bit of things that we need you to change. First, you need to fetch the data from external data source API. We don't use Pizza API here. What is this? Also, we don't use Cloudinary here because it's too expensive. Yeah, I'm not from Cloudinary anymore, so I can say that. Well, but in general, yeah, so they want to change to a different image optimizations, maybe Nux image, maybe something else. And they want to have more actions available into the component. And maybe they want to customize the card and list view. And of course, localizations. Who can forget about localization, right? So all of this, Jason said, yes, we have to go and add some props for the extendability of the internal team of the product managers, because it's easy to add more prop. But for the extendability for external team, let's say you need to do another API, you need to refactor the whole code, and it takes a lot of time. Or you can go and do it a right way, place your component with composition. And what is composition? Anyone knows? I'm sorry, I don't have any unicorn here, but anyone who don't know, raise your hand. Okay. Good. That means that you are doing your homework right and you all know what is composition. Not composition API. Excuse me. That's two different concepts. So composability or composition have three different characteristics to define it. The first thing is how much there is external dependency to this component, the flexibility of the component in working with other components to create a new component, and finally, how you can share this component to outside and we wouldn't rely on too much configuration for them to reuse it. So these three make composition or composability for component module. So let's go back to our pizza, our pizza gallery. So for the external dependency, we have some external dependency here. The first one is we fetching a pizza from an API. The second one is we mapping the data properties that we receive from the API straight to the component view as if the component accepts that as its own view. So what we don't do any data layer, don't do any mapping. The second thing is we want to resize the image with external API service, like Cloudinary, for example. These two, if you want to make your component have the least external dependency, what you can do here is using composition API to make it into a composable called, say, use fetch data. And here you pass a URL and a functions to actually mapping your data into the component data API. This way, it will keep the component and your data always isolated and will not have a situation where the API change something, and then you have to go to your component and change every field that will change on the API of the external service to it. And the second thing is you can also have another composable, which with image resize. Well, this is allow you to plug in whatever image optimizations behind the scene, and you don't have to expose to the component or whoever use this function. So how are we going to rewrite this component? Very simple. We just import the with image resize. We create a map to data functions where we will transform the image into the image we want with optimization. And we passed the URL to the fetch URL, to the pizza at the first argument. And the second one is the map functions to make sure that the data returned to you already according to your wish on the component UI. Of course, this is a very simple implementation because this one, I kind of assume that the item field and the component field are the same. Okay, next thing, flexibility. So what's the flexibility we can do in this component? In this component, you can see that we render a list of pizza from the pizza gallery. And we have image, some name, description, and price, right? And this is how we go. We have it, but we want to make sure that we are flexible enough that we can accept external component to replace this initially implementations. So for that, we're using scope, name scope, or scope, whatever you feel like, but using scope is a very powerful thing. And I tell you this because I work with React, and in React we have something called children, but in Vue we have scope which makes life much easier. And what we do it here, we put a slot we name it items. We wrap the default one, which is only the name and description, because anyway, item have the name and have to have a description. And then we also add another, if we want to add another extendability, like loading or arrow state, then we add a slot, which is named for loading. We put some default text there, or we can also accept it as props, doesn't matter. And then we also have a slot for arrow and a slot for when you don't have any data. And now this component is ready to be plugged into with customizations. So, and then we can share it. How are we going to do sharing it? Let's assume in the pizza gallery, and then the external team have something called drink gallery. How are we going to use these two? First, we have both of them using items component in the background. And the item components will use the pizza API for pizza gallery externally, and drink API module for the items. And also, of course, the items here will receive something internally like pizza component or something to render the list of pizza. In code, this is the pizza before we do planning, refactoring, whatever it's called. And this is how we build it with items and our own component called pizza. So here we have an item, we have a template, we passed the item, we use the item props back to the slot of the scope of the slot named item, and we render pizza inside it. But then, how are we going to hook it with the pizza data model? We also want to have loading screen, arrow screen, right? So we have a component called fetch component. Instead of using the composable inside the setup script, we have a component called fetch component. We pass to it our own API, URL, and we pass to it also a functions to map the data. And again, this component have a slot called data, and we put the data item inside the slot. And of course, you can also use the slot for loading, slot for arrow to get your own customized loading and arrow state. And inside the fetch component, nothing out of the box, everything is the same, similar concept, loading arrow, and then you have a slot for data. And of course, you receive props here. And that's it. We just built our first component system for the pizza gallery. It's not a pizza gallery anymore, it's the item gallery. Here you have API-specific code, and then we have a set of composable, or you can call it functions, logic, whatsoever, or hooks even, though someone told me they shouldn't use the word hooks, but anyway. So have use fact data, use search, image resize, use card, use favorites, and any composables that you need for this component system. And we have a component fetch component, search component, item component, and pizza component. So how are we going to build it? Let's say I have an items here, and then I'm going to put the pizza, plug it in the pizza, and I also plug it in with the search box component. And for these three to work, I also plug it together with search, use card, use favorite, and that's it. I have a new component called pizza with search, card actions, and favorites action, and so on. For the fetch, I will do also. I put the fetch component plug in together with the item plug in together with the pizza, and I'm using the pizza API and use fetch data to get the pizza with loading arrow and from the API code out of the box. And if I want to do a Pokemon, just replace where it needs to be replaced. That's it. It's great, right? Thank you. Though I didn't do any code here, but still. But again, every approach has pro and con. Composition is a very, very nice concept because it allows you to break the component into very low-level component. So what is the pro of it? Well, first of all, it's very flexible. You can see you have a component. You can create a different component, a different variant of the component from that component. As long as you have a lot of building blocks, you can create anything you want from it and make it work. It can allow you to have less maintenance because now whenever you add some new features, you add the new features to the most related component at the bottom list. And you also add the test to that component, and you don't have to test the whole component built on top of these building blocks. However, you do need to test integration tests to make sure that they plug together correctly and not like something wrong in the middle. And of course, you don't use a lot of props like other component library you have. In the other hand, the cons is also a big trade-off because you don't have any ready-to-go components. Let's say you go to use component library like Vuetify, for example, and they probably have a carousel ready to go. You just need to take it, put a lot of props, do configuration, and it works for you. However, for compositions type, you don't have this. You have to take a carousel, and then you have to take a card from the carousel, from the items, and then plug it together to build it, and then make your own component from it. It's like do-it-yourself style. And you need to know how to compose your component based on building block, which means you need to plan and learn how to break your component into blocks before you even start. And that's require a lot of learning and require you to develop smart, which not always means that you have time for that. And that is composition. And now at this point, you probably ask yourself, we're talking about composition, right? What about visualization? Well, it's not in the scope of this talk because it's too long. No. Well, when I build these building blocks, I already have all the building blocks together. And I zoom in, I also have all the components on the building block built on top of this building block. And I have a flow. As you can see, I have a flow of review, shipping, building, payment, and this is one, make it into one component, it's called Wizard. And all of this is supposed to be on the UI. And behind, I already have on the component here. To make it visualize, you know how to connect these together to make it into a component. I'm using something called stately.io, which allows me to visualize the flow and the connection between different components and different state of the component together. So how does it work? For the checkout wizard, I just said now, you can actually go to this website and build your own component, build your own flow, whether you want to be from review to shipping and to billing to payment and to confirmation for the checkout. That's how it usually flow. And then you can also add the connection, which event will make the transition from this view to that view, and what makes the connection between these two components together. Let's say from review to shipping, we have next, and from shipping back to review, we have a previous event. And also, we can also add other events locally, which means, we can also simulate this to make sure that our flow go according to what we want. And you can see here that we click on it and it works together. And we also want to make sure that our data, component data, update itself, or we want to see how the local state of the component works. And here, you can just drag and drop and write whatever you think that the component needs to handle when the data inside the component. And once you're done with it, you will have the whole diagram that's telling you, okay, I have a shipping component. And in this shipping component, I have the update address, because I'm going to update, I'm going to have an input for user to update the address, and also have update shipping method, and so on. And that's it. We have a whole flow of components, or in certain cases, we call it state machine, that help you to navigate between the flow of the component and flow of the app logic. We don't talk about it in this talk because it's too long, and it's very complex, and I'm sure that you're pretty tired right now. You need some more coffee, so I spare you from that. At this point, we have another component design system of the wizard and the checkout wizard. So we have wizard with a step, with a header, with a footer, and we have several components behind the scenes: review, payment, success, billing, and shipping. And we also have a set of composable logic for each of the component here and related. And we also have an order API and checkout machine, which handling the flow of the checkout machine, how to switch between different components, different view. And from that, we can build a lot of different SDK or different components. Just before we finish, this is actually a real use case in my work when at my group in Microsoft, we're building blocks for an enterprise. And this is one of my projects. We built a schedule meeting called Scheduling Wizard SDK, in which we're using the wizard and the wizard step from the previous component system you saw. And we have one composable, with several composable actually, says use scheduling, use schedule. And we have several machines. I'm using state machine here, but don't care about it. You can use any state, any machine, any logic you want to manage your local state or your app state. So we have one state to manage the meeting type, which is a component. Branch machine to allow you to choose the branch from a list of branch from the fetch from the API. A schedule machine that is the wizard machine that allow you to flow from the meeting type to the branch to the time slot, during the time slot confirm and get the meeting. And the time slot, what it does, it just make sure that when you enter the time slot component, it will fetch the available time slot from the branch and the meeting time option you choose, and give you options and allow you to choose the time slot and save it. And we also have a building block, which is the logic, called gateway service, which allow you to plug into the schedule meeting wizard with a different gateway service that match your API, your server. Or you can use our gateway service and provide a delegator that acts like a black box in the middle. We talk to the gateway service to initialize the gateway service according to your API server, your configuration of the backend. And then you can use this block and plug it into your application, and it works according to what you want. And the whole thing here is building block. Each component, each logic, each machine here is also building block, which means you can choose not to use the wizard SDK, the whole component. You can also take the delegator. You can also take the gateway service and build your own component on top of it. And you can also take any of the machines here and build your own component based on top of the machines, which is the state management here. And that's it. And what is the key takeaway from until now? Well, my key takeaway after I do this project is that you need to plan the component first. Coding is always easy, but planning, understanding how the component looks like, what are the use case for it, is hard. And that requires you to visualize it, because when you receive a whole list of user story, a lot of text, you probably don't want to read it and you just want to jump in and code. Take a pen and paper, draw some diagram, put in use case, at each use case, put in a diagram, the flow of the component you're going to do, and then you'll find something in common in order for you to build your building block. And you should separate your logic and the UI whenever it's available. Why? Because UI, logic is your logic. You never know one day you're going to change the UI to some new component, and you don't want to rewrite the whole thing, and refactor will cause you damage. So try to minimize the refactor effort as much as possible. And composition is flexible, but I'm a fan of composition API, but I must say that it's not easy to learn, and it's not easy to do. So it can be very overkill if you're doing something that is simple and you don't need building block. And if you have a design system that you have to follow it regardless, and you're not going to extend it to other group. In Microsoft, on the other hand, we have to do it because we're building solution for a lot of different enterprise, and we don't want to duplicate the effort. Why we can just use the same component and change a bit inside to make it into a block Lego. And that's it. Well, I'm going over time, but sorry, I'm going to introduce myself. I cannot not go in without introducing myself. So I'm Shavin, as you know it. I'm a senior software engineer in Microsoft. I'm also a book author. And this is the, what you call the meme I really like. Because someone in the Vue conference sent me a memo about the client wants React, and this is my response for it. I'm also a GDE expert and meta developer expert from Cloudinary. I'm the Vietnamese living in Israel for more than a decade. And yes, I recently have a book that is in pre-release for free, so check it out. And thank you for joining my talk.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was amazing.